Yeah, thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Brandy, and I'm the lead for the retention reset track here at the C List. Over our next 10-ish minutes together, I want to give you some genuinely useful stuff that will be helpful for you, whether you end up working with me ever or not. Because no, who knows? And that's what retention and performance problems actually look like inside organizations, why they persist, what they cost, and something you can do about it before Q3. All right. Sound good? Let's go. Okay. Here's the real problem. Retention and performance problems rarely arrive with a big warning. They tend to look like an average Tuesday or an average day. It looks like your top performer getting a little bit quieter, maybe a little less involved in meetings. They're still delivering, but not as much as you're used to, right? There's just that little slide and slip, and maybe they're not leaning in or volunteering for stuff as much as they used to. It sometimes looks like a manager who's absorbing the whole team's stress because she doesn't want to pass it up the chain. She's telling herself it'll settle down after this project, but there's always another project that gets in the way. It can also look like an exit interview that surprised the HR team or senior leadership, but honestly didn't surprise anyone on that person's team. The signals were maybe there for months. Someone was disengaged, the workload was too high, manager didn't have the skills to name what was happening or the authority to fix the problem. Here's the thing. These aren't mystery problems. They are familiar patterns. And because they are familiar, they are fixable, especially when we catch them early enough. Sorry. So here's what I want every leader in this room to walk away with today. These signals tend to show up weeks and months before anyone hands in their notice. But the question is whether or not someone's looking for them. So we see things like, and just to be clear, these are not like an exhaustive checklist, and you won't necessarily see each one of them, but these can be some warning signals for you. So we might see a drop in contribution. A person who used to bring ideas to every meeting isn't speaking up as much. They're still delivering on their work, but they're not as invested in improvement. You might also see a slip in output quality. It's not a bad week, but a pattern of it. Absenteeism might be creeping up amongst individuals or perhaps within departments. And this can be especially obvious right after crunch periods or a leadership change. You might also see disconnection from the team. That could look like shorter responses, skipping things that used to matter to them, just being less engaged in the break room or in the hallways or on team meetings. We can also see these two that leaders tend to miss the most. One is managers absorbing pressure without naming it, and teams that have stopped pushing back on workload because when they've tried, it's fallen on deaf ears and nothing has changed. These aren't soft signals. They're measurable, observable, and actionable, but only if you're trained to see them and empowered to name them. Most organizations and most leaders aren't, and that's the root of the problem. I've worked with a lot of organizations on this, and I want to be really clear. The problem is almost never that the leaders don't care. Often they care a lot. It's just that they don't have the tools to solve the problem or they don't know where to start. So these are three patterns that show up over and over that contribute to that lack of tools. One is no shared language for what's happening. Leaders can see the symptoms, but they can't agree on the cause. Is it burnout, a culture problem, a management gap, a communication gap? Without a common framework, everyone's diagnosing a little bit differently, intervening a little differently, and nothing really sticks. We also often see managers promoted for performance, not people or leadership skills. This happens across sector. It is so common. For example, your best engineer becomes your engineering manager. Your top sales rep becomes the sales manager. Someone who's excellent on the manufacturing line becomes a supervisor. They're good at the job. That's why they get promoted. But no one teaches them how to read a struggling team member, how to have a stay conversation before somebody's already decided to leave, or how to escalate a concern without it necessarily becoming a formal HR event. And let's be clear, sometimes it needs to be, but sometimes it doesn't. We also end up with generic solutions for specific problems. We end up trying to fix a problem by treating the symptom or providing coping strategies. So, for example, your EAP program, really important to have, but it's not going to fix a workload problem. A pizza party, fun chance for connection, but it's not going to fix a breakdown in trust. And when organizations reach for the wrong tools, we spend some money, we signal that we're trying, but nothing changes. And in the end, that erodes trust much faster than doing nothing. And this is why retention problems persist, even in organizations with the best intention. The intention is there, but the precision and the tackling of the right problem isn't. I also want to be really clear that these problems carry a real cost. I hear leaders say a lot, now's not the time to deal with it. It's not our focus. We just got to get through this work. We got to get this board done. We got to do this thing, got to do this thing. And I get it, right? There's a lot on your plate. And I also want to be clear that waiting carries its own price tag. Replacing a mid-level employee costs between 50 and 200% of their annual salary. That, my friends, is not just your recruiting fee. It also includes the productivity gap while the role is open, your onboarding time getting your new person up to speed and where the other person was at before, and the work that everyone else is absorbing in the meantime, plus the cost of the institutional knowledge that walked out the door when that employee left. An average new hire takes 6 months to reach full productivity. That means you've got 6 months of that gap on top of whatever capacity problem created and contributed to the exit in the first place. And here's one we often forget about, but in my opinion, is one that matters a lot. High performers who watch a colleague exit poorly are 2 to 3 more times more likely to follow. Not because they were planning to leave, but because they saw something that told them how this organization treats people under pressure. They saw what happened to their colleague and they have options. So they started considering whether or not staying in your organization is the best choice for them. These are the folks that leave before you're ready and cause the most disruption when they go. Attrition isn't just a headcount problem. It's a performance problem, a momentum problem, and a leadership credibility problem all at once. The cost of waiting isn't neutral, and every month that it sits unaddressed, that gap widens. So I want to share with you 3 moves, including one you can make this week, which is your bonus 4th move. The fix isn't a massive HR transformation. Honestly, it's small shifts, and most organizations need these 3 things. First, diagnose before you act. Workload pressure requires a different response than manager capability gaps, which is different than a breakdown in trust and psychological safety. A mismatched intervention not only wastes money, it further erodes trust and wastes time, making this much worse. So we want to start with the right diagnosis. Equipping your managers is the second. Retention lives at the team level. Managers need specific skills, like how to have a stay conversation, how to read signs of burnout and overwhelm and workload fatigue, how to raise a concern with the staff without turning it into a crisis or making it worse, and how to connect their team to the resources that your organization already has. Third step, we want to build a 30, 60, 90-day and beyond plan, right? We're not just throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping to see what sticks, or throwing pizza parties at the staff and hoping it works. We want to have targeted interventions that have people who own it, timelines for when we're expecting things to get done, and a way to measure whether or not it's working and moving the needle for your team. This isn't a wellness announcement. It's a plan that your team can see and hold you to, that they can see how it's doing. And your first move, the bonus one, I really encourage you to do this week. If you take home one thing from my briefing today, it's this. You don't need approval for this. Just think of one person on your team who's been quietest lately. The one who used to be active, involved, and who's kind of gone a little quiet lately, or maybe just the way they're showing up at work has changed. It's not quite the same as it used to be. Or maybe think about the person whose exit would genuinely be a big problem, who's got really big shoes to fill. I bet you can think of their name right now. Let me give you a moment. Think about who that would be. Who's the person who's either gone quiet or who's going to have that really big impact if they leave? Once you know who it is, I encourage you to book 20 minutes with them this week. Ask them one question. What would need to change in our workplace for it to feel sustainable for you? Also ask, what are some supports that you need to feel like you're able to do your job to your best of your ability? And then I want you to just listen. You're not there to fix the problem. You're not there to defend what's going on or argue whether or not this is a doable change. You're here to listen. And when they tell you what they need, say thank you. That conversation is where the retention work actually starts. And it is the fastest way to find out which lever to pull. Once you have that answer, the clarity call is your next step. And Alex shared the link for that in the chat. That's where we will figure out what you can do to move forward on that one.